Tensura, Melting the Eternal Frost. By JackDaWeb on Wattpad. This story depicts an alternate timeline wherein Velzard attends Walpurgis after sensing Veldora's presence. She subsequently meets our protagonist and becomes interested in him after his display at the meeting. After thinking for a bit, she decides to move to Tempest and becomes a close ally of Rimuru. Rimuru and Velzard will sometimes be out of character, as it is unavoidable. Our protagonist will be more rational and have an actual spine, while Velzard will not be as cold and ruthless as her canon counterpart. Besides, Velzard is missing a lot of characterization, so the author decided to write his own interpretation of her personality based on the original light novel. I recommend at least having seen the second season of the anime, since the story will pick up from there. This fanfiction will follow the main story beats from the original light novel, meaning some arcs will get glossed over if there are very few changes. Chapter 5, Birth of Amonis. Rimuru's POV. What is she doing? Crap. Did she realize I was purposefully keeping my distance from her? I was trying to avoid this exact situation. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened. Cheyenne had often ignored personal space as well. But this felt different. She began to hum a tune I didn't recognize, swaying gently from side to side. Slowly, I regained my composure and let myself relax. The moment felt peaceful. Minutes later, Velzard stopped humming and gazed at the star-filled night sky. The atmosphere here is delightful. I'm not usually a fan of high temperatures, but I haven't felt this relaxed in a long time. Rimuru-kun, she said softly. I'm glad you like it. When I accepted your request during Walpurgis, I worried whether Tempest would meet your standards. I replied honestly. Even if Tempest had turned out differently, I would still have stayed. My main reasons for being here are to monitor your growth and ensure Veldora-kun is behaving himself. The other wonderful things I've encountered here are just bonuses, she explained, a playful glimmer in her eyes. I see. That's good to hear, I replied. We remained like that for a while until Velzard's eyes suddenly began to glow. Her blue irises shifted to a brilliant yellow, similar to mine. A surge of magical energy radiated from her, immense yet oddly soothing. Rimuru-kun, could you pick a star in the sky? She asked unexpectedly. What do you mean, Velzard-san? I replied. Up there. Pick one, she said, pointing toward the heavens. I looked up at the countless stars, each unique in color and size. After a moment, a particularly large blue star caught my eye. That one, I said. Velzard followed my gaze and nodded. All right, watch closely. She raised her hand toward the sky and closed her fingers into a fist. At first, nothing happened. Then her hand began to glow, and the surrounding magicules surged violently. The light was so intense that I had to look away. When it faded, I looked back up. The star was gone. What did you do? I asked, stunned. Velzard lowered her hand, revealing a tiny glowing mass that shimmered like a crystalline snowflake. I converted the energy from that star into a condensed form. Its thermal and light energy became this object. The star itself wasn't destroyed. It will simply take time to reappear, she explained casually. That's incredible, I said honestly. She chuckled softly and lightly tapped me, clearly amused. I want you to have it, she continued. You can store it in your subspace and use it as a reserve source of magicules if necessary. Are you sure? I asked. She nodded. All right then, Beelzebub. The object vanished. Raphael-sensei, how many magicules does it contain? The object contains an extremely high concentration of magicules. Estimated capacity, approximately 10 times your current reserves. 10 times. That was absurd. Begin analysis, but don't consume it yet. Understood. So that's one of your ultimate skills? Velzard asked. Crap, I slipped. Why yeah? Beelzebub is one of my more useful abilities, I admitted. One of? She asked, intrigued. I possess 4 ultimate skills, I said after a moment. Velzard froze. 4. Lord of Gluttony, Beelzebub. Lord of Wisdom, Raphael. Lord of Vows, Uriel. And Lord of Storms, Veldora. She stared at me in disbelief. That's unprecedented, she murmured. What about you? I asked. She composed herself. I possess Lord of Patience, Gabriel. Through it and my nature as a true dragon, I can briefly stop time. To replicate it, you would need temporal manipulation or space-time domination. I'll remember that, I replied. Our conversation continued late into the night, eventually growing quieter. Velzard's expression darkened. It's about Veldora and Malim, she said. My failures as a sister. She spoke of grief, punishment, and regret. Listening to her, I felt a deep ache. The carefree Veldora I knew had endured far more than he ever let on. I'm sorry, I said quietly. Eventually, her composure broke, and she began to cry. Without thinking, I shifted to my human form and sat beside her, giving her the space she needed to finally release emotions she'd buried for millennia. We stayed like that for a long time. When she finally pulled back, she wiped her face and took a steadying breath. I'm sorry you had to see me like that, Rimuru-kun, she said, her voice light, yet laced with lingering sadness. Don't be, Velzard-san. It's good to let it out sometimes, you know? Was that your first time opening up to someone like that? I asked gently, concerned for her well-being. She nodded. I won't pretend to have all the answers to your problems. After all, I'm just a mere human at heart who got reincarnated as a slime. I paused, struggling to find the right words. I can't compare my short life to the long existence of a true dragon. However, you should talk to Malim and Veldora and open up to them, just as you did with me. It might not be easy, but I'm confident they will understand and forgive you, I suggested wholeheartedly. Her expression shifted, a flicker of hope igniting within her as she considered my words. Why you really think they'll forgive me? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. If you can have that conversation where you both share your feelings and understand each other's perspectives, then I believe they will, I reassured her. Besides, I'm sure Veldora doesn't harbor any hatred. He's just respectfully afraid of you, I joked, attempting to lighten the mood. The quip drew a light chuckle from Velzard, lifting her mood visibly. Thank you for the advice, Rimuru-kun, she said, her voice remaining low. Fufufu, it seems our roles have reversed. I'm supposed to supervise you, yet here you are guiding me. She mused, a hint of gratitude in her tone. No need to thank me, Velzard-san. You're already helping me a lot, and I know you'll continue supporting my growth, I said, trying to keep the mood light. I guess you're right, and I've decided to have that conversation with Veldora-kun tomorrow. As for Malim, I'm unsure if showing up at her domain unannounced is appropriate, she muttered, a hint of uncertainty creeping back into her voice. About that. Malim often visits Tempest. You might get your chance soon, I said, watching the light of hope return to her eyes. That's good to know. Anyway, it's getting late. Let's head to your home. Well, I suppose this will be my residence as well, now that I'll be staying here, she said with a light smile. Yeah, we've spent enough time here. It's nice to unwind and relax, and this place is perfect, I replied, my heart lighter now that she seemed more at ease. We quickly got changed and began our walk home, the city draped in the gentle embrace of night. The atmosphere was peaceful, a serene silence enveloping us, punctuated only by the chirping of crickets and the soft echo of our footsteps. The world around us felt tranquil, almost dreamlike. Arriving at our destination, I was thoroughly pleased. My home had been renovated. It now had 2 floors, and the area was larger than before. The bottom floor housed a living room, a kitchen, and a mini library brimming with manga. The second floor held our rooms, each designed to reflect our personalities. Entering the house, we were greeted by the sight of Veldora sprawled comfortably on the couch in the living room, engrossed in a volume of Jujutsu Kaisen. The soft glow of the reading lamp illuminated his features, casting playful shadows across the room. Yo, Veldora, we're back, I called out, a grin spreading across my face as I stepped further inside. Good evening, Veldora-kun, Velzard added, her tone warm yet light, the lingering traces of her earlier sadness still fading. Oh, good evening, you too, he replied absent-mindedly, his attention shifting back to the pages of his manga. I couldn't help but sigh, watching him for a moment. This guy could hardly tear himself away from his manga, even for us. Though I couldn't blame him. Jujutsu Kaisen was quite the page-turner. With the late hour creeping in, Velzard and I exchanged a knowing glance and headed up the stairs together. "Good night, Rimuru-kun," she said softly as we reached the top. "Good night, Velzard-san," I replied, watching as she headed toward her room. Once inside my room, I shut the lights off, plunging the space into darkness. I jumped onto my bed, sinking into the familiar comfort of my sheets, mentally exhausted from the day's whirlwind of events. Lying on my back, I stared at the ceiling, letting my mind wander through the memories of the day. So much had happened in such a short time. During the Walpurgis meeting, I had gained the ability to move within time stop, a gift from Raphael that felt both exhilarating and daunting. Velzard's decision to move to Tempest was another seismic shift. It filled me with a mix of excitement and nervous anticipation. I also learned about Diablo's origins as a primordial demon, a revelation that underscored my ally's power. And, of course, Velzard made her official debut in our realm, a moment that would surely be etched into Tempest's history. As I replayed the day's events in my mind, I couldn't help but smile at the thought of our time spent touring the city, sharing laughter and stories. Too many significant moments had unfolded during our time there, and I knew this night would become a cherished memory, a cornerstone in the ever-expanding story of my life. With those thoughts swirling in my head, I activated sleep mode, allowing my mind to quiet and my body to relax. The weariness washed over me, and soon, I drifted off into a peaceful slumber. Third-person POV. Business in Tempest was gradually returning to normal after a few tumultuous days. The dust from the chaos that had erupted from Malim's devastating display of power was beginning to settle. As the news spread that the war had officially been declared over, merchants cautiously began to trickle back, drawn by the promise of opportunity in a country that had emerged from conflict. The influx of lycanthropes from Eurasania, seeking refuge after their capital was obliterated, further revitalized the economy. With more labor available, construction projects sprang up across the territory, breathing new life into the landscape of Tempest. Yet, amidst this backdrop of renewal and growth, an undercurrent of tension simmered within a particular household. In the quiet corners of their home, Velzard found herself grappling with a turmoil that had been simmering beneath the surface since the day they lost their eldest brother, Veldora. With encouragement from Rimuru, she finally mustered the courage to approach Veldora, her younger sibling, to seek a heartfelt one-on-one conversation. It was a chance to bridge the gap that had widened between them. Nervous yet eager, Veldora accepted her request, his heart racing at the prospect of finally confronting the tangled emotions they both harbored. Velzard, feeling the weight of anticipation, placed a soundproof barrier around their home, ensuring their conversation remained private. The air felt charged with unspoken words and raw emotions within this intimate space. "Velzard, nay," Veldora began, his voice surprisingly subdued, a stark contrast to his usual boisterous demeanor. He took a deep, shaky breath. "After Veldora died, I felt nothing but distress. I grew restless. At everything, at everyone, but especially at humanity," he said, clenching his fists, his knuckles turning white. I didn't know what to do with it. That rage just consumed me. I lashed out. I destroyed their nations. I vented my frustration without thought." His voice dropped, heavy with regret. Velzard listened, her own expression softening as Veldora spoke. She reached out, gently placing a hand on his arm, a gesture of comfort rather than accusation. "Veldora-kun," she murmured, her voice laced with a newfound tenderness. "I understand. I was grief-stricken, too." A profound sadness settled in her eyes as she spoke. "But I never wanted to destroy his creation, his world. When you rampaged, my own grief, my own rage, it twisted my judgment. I saw your pain, but I punished it. I saw a child, just like me, acting out of unimaginable sorrow, and I cursed myself for it, for how I treated you, for letting my own pain manifest as punishment against you, my little brother, who shared my loss." Her voice trembled, tears finally welling, though she fought to keep them from falling. She couldn't meet his gaze, the weight of her shame pressing down. In that moment of vulnerability, something unexpected happened. Instead of shying away or harboring resentment, Veldora moved closer, gently pulling her into an unexpected embrace. His large frame enveloped her, a warmth she hadn't felt in millennia. "I've always been terrified of you, sister," he admitted, his voice soft, a genuine confession. "But I never hated you. Never. I understand why you did what you did. We were both hurting. I forgive you, Velzard." His words were a balm to her wounded heart, offering the possibility of healing and reconciliation. Rimuru observed their exchange from a distance, his heart swelling with hope. Although he couldn't hear the words being spoken, he sensed the emotional weight of their conversation and the gradual shift in their dynamic. He watched as the siblings appeared to find common ground, a beautiful reconciliation unfolding before his eyes. Satisfied, he vowed to assist Velzard in reconnecting with Malim, eager to support his friends in healing the bonds that had been frayed by grief and time. Rimuru's POV. "Man, I'm happy those two finally had a heart-to-heart conversation. I'd been worried about how Velzard and Veldora would get along living in the same house, but it looks like they've smoothed things over. Now that they've reconnected, I'm sure only good things will come from it." With that pressing concern behind me, I teleported to the sealed cave, the very spot where Veldora had been imprisoned when I first met him. The memories flooded back, and a wave of nostalgia washed over me. My most recent visit had been right after my Demon Lord evolution, when I'd unsealed Veldora. The place felt oddly unchanged, as if time itself had been halted within these cavernous walls. You might be wondering why I am here now. Raphael had recently made a startling discovery while analyzing the object Velzard had given me. She called it a frost star remnant, and she was eager to test a theory involving releasing a tenth of the energy stored within it. But I wanted to ensure everything was safe. The last thing I wanted was to cause harm to anyone nearby. Holding my palm up, I summoned the object, its cold light shimmering brilliantly in the dim cave. It was significantly smaller than the original, representing only a tenth of its full power. Even so, it pulsated with energy that resonated with my own, a tangible reminder of the might it contained. "Raphael-sensei, are you sure this will be safe?" I couldn't hide my unease. "Positive. I've run the calculations numerous times and concluded that this frost star remnant holds the key to evolving master further." "You still haven't explained what this thing even is." "Apologies for that. I will explain it now. The closest thing I could compare this remnant to is a Demon Lord seed. Possessing a Demon Lord seed is the initial requirement one must fulfill to evolve into a true Demon Lord. This remnant is similar in that aspect. The major difference is that an individual must satisfy two specific conditions to become compatible with it. So it's like a multi-layer quality check system, then? I have to meet specific conditions to become compatible with it. Afterward, I can qualify for another evolution." "That is correct. That seems convoluted. What are the two conditions? And have I satisfied both of them?" I felt hope and anticipation building within me. "The first condition requires the individual to have an established soul corridor with a true dragon. Master has already satisfied this thanks to your soul corridor with Veldora. The second is to possess incredibly high analytical and computational capabilities." "Doesn't that mean I've satisfied both conditions already?" "I'm afraid only partially so. After appraising the star remnant, I concluded that my analytical and computational capabilities aren't enough to satisfy the second condition." A beat of silence followed, unusual for Raphael. "I apologize for my incompetence, Master." "Oi, don't say that, Raphael-sensei. Your analytical and computational capabilities are unmatched. It's probably impossible to satisfy both conditions since there's no way you weren't deemed good enough. I call complete bullshit." The thought of Raphael doubting herself was outrageous. It was something I wouldn't stand for. My unwavering belief in her seemed to ripple through my very soul, touching her core. It's not entirely impossible, as I did manage to find an alternative way to achieve compatibility with it. Instead of assimilating the whole fragment at once, separating it into 10 equal parts would make the process possible, albeit much slower. For real, you never cease to amaze me, partner. Even when faced with an impossibility, you find your way around it. I'm truly thankful to have you with me. I am grateful for your praise, master. As a wave of nostalgia washed over me, I remembered a promise I had made earlier. Right? I just remembered something. I promised to give you a name, didn't I? I gathered my thoughts, pondering on the perfect name to grant her. You've been with me since I reincarnated into this world. You've guided me through my journey and helped me face impossible odds. Out of everyone I hold dear, you're the most deserving of a name, and a special one at that. From this day onward, you shall now be known as Seal, my partner in crime, and the one who makes my path clear like the sky and the heavens above. At that moment, I felt a massive shift occur within my soul. A surge of power coursed through me, overwhelming yet exhilarating, as I sensed the birth of a new entity within my very being. Well, it wasn't a new entity, strictly speaking. Instead, it was as if Raphael's ego had transcended its original bounds, evolving into something far greater, something infused with genuine emotion and will. The outpouring of energy lasted only a few seconds, but it felt like an eternity. When the sensation subsided, I searched the depths of my soul, eager to witness the profound change I had just initiated. And there she was, Seal, the newly evolved ego, radiating an aura of divinity and wisdom, yet now imbued with an unmistakable warmth. I am Seal, a monas, or a theosophical core, and the unifier of all skills. I exist within the soul of my master, Rimuru-sama, and I will do my best to support you from now on. It will be my pleasure to work with you. Chapter 6, True Dragon Egg. Rimuru's POV. Seal's transformation had been astounding. Her presence now exuded a serene divinity, radiating wisdom and a complete, boundless understanding of the world around her. She felt ethereal, like the clear sky stretching endlessly to the horizon. I bet she has more than enough analytical power to satisfy that stupid second condition now. I couldn't help but chuckle to myself. The idea that Raphael had ever been anything less than perfect in analysis was beyond absurd. Those conditions had better be worth all this fuss, and this Frost Star remnant better live up to its promise. I look forward to working with you, Seal. Likewise, Master. Just call me Rimuru, Seal. Remember, we're partners. No need for formalities. Why, yes, I'll do my best, Rimuru-sama. Her nervousness almost made me laugh. That hesitant Rimuru-sama was adorable. Partner felt right. Seal had been with me from the start, guiding me through impossible odds, and there was no one more deserving of my trust. Now then, about that remnant. Have I met the second condition already? Yes. Now that I am a monas, my analytical and computational capabilities have increased 100-fold. You can now assimilate with the entire remnant instead of splitting it. Begin assimilation, yes/no? Seriously, still asking? Yes. The moment I gave my confirmation, a rush of chilling energy surged through me, colder beyond anything I'd felt before. Even with natural effects nullification, the frost bit through, threatening to turn me into an ice sculpture. Just as I thought my very being might shatter, a profound warmth and vibrant energy replaced the freezing sensation, and an incredible, surging sense of power radiated through me. Seal, what just happened? I feel amazing. You have successfully assimilated with the Frost Star remnant, obtaining a true dragon egg. Under the right conditions, it will now be possible for you to evolve into a true dragon. The revelation hit me like a lightning bolt, shaking me to my core. So, this was what Diablo and Velzard had hinted at when they mentioned my potential. I felt an uncontrollable, wide grin spreading across my face, a primal surge of exhilaration. A true dragon. They're the absolute pinnacle of existence in this world. Additionally, because the Frost Star remnant retained Velzard's attributes, you now possess the ultimate skill, Lord of Frost, Velzard. It functions similarly to Lord of Storms, Veldora, but with Velzard's traits. Nice. Wait, does that mean I can restore Velzard just like I can with Veldora? No. The sub-skill, Frost Dragon Restoration, requires a soul corridor with Velzard, which is currently unavailable. However, you can summon her to your location with Frost Dragon Release. Additionally, you can now wield Frost Magic. Even without restoration, that's incredibly useful. Having 5 ultimate skills. Is my soul handling that okay? Yes, though possessing 5 ultimate skills is taxing on your soul. Merging or adjusting some skills could ease the burden. I request access to manage your skills for optimal efficiency. Grant access, yes/no. Yeah, go for it. If merging skills would keep me at full strength, I'd happily hand over that task to Seal. Her judgment was absolute. Thank you, Rimuru-sama. I will begin the optimization now. In the meantime, I recommend experimenting with Frost Magic and Storm Magic. Alright then, good luck, partner. With Seal diving into her work, I decided to experiment with Frost Magic and Storm Magic, as she suggested. These abilities held immense potential, yet I'd barely scratched the surface of their power. It was time to get intimately familiar with them. Starting with Frost Magic, I sent a blast of pure, condensed ice toward the cave wall. The air around it instantly supercooled, and the wall itself was chilled to absolute zero. Even with minimum magicule output, the blast gouged a deep crater into the solid rock, sending debris flying off in all directions. The scattered fragments seemed almost frozen mid-flight, moving in agonizing slow motion, as if time itself had been trapped in a shroud of frost. My eyes widened. This magic didn't just freeze. It could drastically decelerate movement. To test it further, I hurled a rock with decent force and activated Frost Magic the moment it left my hand. The rock's momentum plummeted, and it moved only a few millimeters per second through the air, completely ensnared, as if perfectly preserved in a block of ice. So, this is the power of Frost Magic. It could drastically decelerate anything it affected, a terrifying and versatile power that could turn the tide in countless ways. Switching to Storm Magic, I drew on its destructive aspect, releasing a concentrated lightning bolt with a heavy input of magicules. Instead of merely cracking the wall, the bolt blasted clean through, carving a deep, molten tunnel and leaving glowing magma in its wake. The sheer heat had instantly turned the stone to liquid. Just imagining the devastation it could cause made me shudder. Suddenly, a wickedly effective idea sprang to mind. By freezing a target's movement with Frost Magic and following up with a high-output strike of Storm Magic, I'd created a lethal combo. With no room to dodge, even true demon lords might struggle to withstand an attack like that. Satisfied, I walked over to the edge of the underground lake and sat down, gazing into the water's reflection. Greetings, Rimuru-sama. I've completed the modification of your skills. Would you like to hear about it? Seal's voice echoed in my mind, her tone calm, yet tinged with a subtle, new enthusiasm. I stood up abruptly, ready to ingest the new information regarding my current abilities. Oh, excellent work, Seal. Absolutely. Let's hear it. Currently, you possess only 2 ultimate skills. But fear not, as both hold powers beyond comprehension. The first is the ultimate evolution of Lord of Gluttony, Beelzebub, now transformed into God of the Void, Azathoth. This skill was created by merging Beelzebub with Lord of Storms, Veldora, Lord of Frost, Velzard, and part of Lord of Wisdom, Raphael. As I am now detached from Raphael, it is merely a hollow shell, so there is no cause for concern. That's absurd. Azathoth is the end-all, be-all of the Lovecraftian mythos, embodying the void itself. Seal had taken everything I'd acquired and fused it into something so unfathomably powerful that it was named after such a deity. If it matched the name, then it wasn't merely strong. No, it was on a level where strength didn't even apply. I could feel the latent energy stirring within me like a slumbering, cosmic storm. The second skill is an advanced form of Lord of Vows, Uriel, created by combining the remainder of Raphael and your other consolidated skills. It is now known as God of Harvest, Shub-Niggurath. This skill emphasizes growth, creation, and preservation, all intensified by the powers once held by Uriel. That concludes the breakdown of your new skills. I was left utterly speechless. My two skills now carried the name God. The very idea was surreal. Ultimate skills usually bore the title of Lord, yet these transcended even that. Seal might have just given me weapons that could reshape reality itself. My fingers itched to test them and see what these skills could do. However, I had other matters to attend to. I'd love to put these to the test, but I'll have to wait until the opportunity presents itself. Understandable, Rimuru-sama. In addition, your magical capacity has increased threefold thanks to obtaining a true dragon egg. Threefold. The remnant had left a permanent boost to my reserves. This was better than just a one-time charge. It was like an endless well of energy to draw from. Say, in terms of raw magical quantity, how close am I now to a true dragon? Based on my calculations, you currently possess just under a third of Velzard's magical count. Keep in mind, however, that in battle, magical reserves are but one factor. Skill quality and the user's experience hold far more weight. A third of Velzard's pool, huh? I can't even imagine the kind of power she possesses. But if I've reached even that much, this is amazing. Thanks, partner. You're very welcome, Rimuru-sama. With a satisfied grin, I activated my teleportation and returned to Tempest. Within seconds, I found myself in my living room. And, as usual, Veldora was sprawled out on the couch with a manga, looking more like a lazy house cat than the mighty storm dragon. Sigh. So much for the fearsome storm dragon. Leaving him to his reading, I moved to the mini library. To my surprise, Velzard sat gracefully with a steaming cup of tea and a manga balanced elegantly in her hands. She looked utterly absorbed, yet completely poised. Seriously? Her too? I couldn't help but shake my head with a defeated sigh. At the sound, Velzard glanced up, noticing my presence immediately. Oi, Velzard-san. I never thought of you as someone who'd get into reading manga. I called out, disbelief in my tone. Era? Welcome back, Rimuru-kun. How have you been? She greeted me with a bright smile. Rimuru-kun? Wait, where did that nickname come from? A new nickname already? All right, fine. To answer your question, I'm doing great. Actually, feeling better than ever. I replied, grinning. Velzard set her manga down and slowly strolled toward me. She said, stopping close by. You were gone for quite some time, you know. Fufufu. Her tone turned playful. What were you talking about? I was gone for an hour. I stammered. She chuckled. An agonizingly long hour, to be precise. I even started reading manga to pass the time. Seems like you've been having quite a lot of fun teasing me lately. I murmured, my voice low and as steady as I could make it. Actually, ever since you moved here, you haven't missed a single chance. But you know what? I don't mind it. In fact, I paused. I think I enjoy it a little too. So, I hope you don't mind if I get my revenge. I said, my voice lowering to a level I never knew it could. Velzard looked flushed and momentarily speechless. Her eyes, usually so serene, went wide out of pure shock, keeping my gaze locked on hers. Rimuru-kun. She stammered, her face now the color of a ripe tomato, steam practically rising from her. Yes, Velzard-chan, I replied, with a sly smile. You know, you're pretty cute when you're flustered like this. It's usually me on the receiving end of all the teasing, so this change of pace is refreshing, don't you think? I teased, letting my voice drop to a playful whisper. Velzard's eyes snapped open, her stunned expression quickly melting into a pout as she crossed her arms and looked away with an indignant huff. I couldn't help but chuckle, watching her so flustered like this. I guess this is why she enjoys teasing me so much. She really is cute like this. Leaving her to cool down, I walked out of the library and past the living room, where Veldora was still thoroughly engrossed in his manga. At least he didn't see any of that, since having him witness that exchange would have been painfully awkward. Exiting our home, I expanded my wings and took off toward the Capitol building, a satisfied grin still lingering on my face. Flashback to a few minutes ago. Veldora's POV. I just finished volume 25 of Jujutsu Kaisen, and oh boy, things are really heating up. That cliffhanger left me buzzing for the big showdown between Gojo and Sukuna in the next volume. I can't wait. With renewed energy, I hopped up from the couch and strolled over to the library to snag the next volume. But the moment I cracked open the door, I saw something that made my brain short-circuit. What in tarnation? I froze, barely holding the door open as I took in the scene unfolding on the other side. Rimuru and Velzard were, well, let's just say the atmosphere between them was unusually tense. And it didn't take a genius to figure out what was happening. Velzard had a sly look in her eyes. In contrast, Rimuru looked like he was about to combust from sheer embarrassment. This was just like one of those romance manga my sister had been devouring lately. She has brought her knowledge of sacred texts to life. Quahaha. Oh, how will you wriggle out of this one, sworn brother? I squinted, trying to catch some of their conversation, but honestly, I didn't need to hear a word. Their body language was telling me everything. Velzard had that teasing look down to a fine art. Rimuru was clearly cornered. But wait. He suddenly took a deep breath and reversed their positions. Oh, so the tables have turned. Now it was Rimuru's turn to play the seducer. He held her chin just like she had his, and bam. Velzard's face turned a shade of red I had never even known was possible for her. She was practically steaming. Then, in classic romance manga style, he pulled her closer. The classic bait-and-switch. Very well done, sworn brother, very well done. Velzard looks. Wait, is that disappointment? Oi, don't tell me she actually wants him to kiss her. This whole thing was straight out of the teasing rival becomes something more playbook. 1 minute, they're just exchanging jabs, and it's full-blown romance territory in the next. It's practically fate. Deciding I'd seen enough, I tiptoed away from the door and back to the living room. If either of them realized I'd witnessed all that, I'd be in for a world of hurt. I value my life way too much to risk it on this particular scene. Velzard's POV. I was back in my room, sitting on my bed, huddled in the corner with my arms wrapped tightly around my legs, swaying slightly, as if that might shake off the embarrassment. What just happened? My face burned like a furnace, and I buried it in my arms, trying to hide away from the memory. Rimuru, teasing you is my job, not the other way around. Yet, for some reason, I didn't hate it. In fact, I liked it. Is this how he feels every time I tease him? What have you done to me? I placed my hand on my chest, feeling the wild rhythm of my heart. Minutes ticked by as I calmed myself, lying back to stare at the ceiling, the memory still flickering behind my closed eyelids. But as the initial shock faded, something else came into focus. Rimuru had changed. Beneath all that teasing and nonchalance, I had sensed his magical signature shifting. It felt different, like the whisper of something powerful yet unrefined. So he'd actually done it. He'd accomplished something even my elder brother thought was impossible. Rimuru figured out the Star Remnant's purpose all on his own without me saying a word, which means he can evolve into a true dragon if he follows the right path. And when he does, Veldora and I will be there to guide him. With a renewed smile, I left my room and headed downstairs. Veldora was sprawled on the couch, engrossed in his manga with a tub of ice cream in his hand. His utter obliviousness would be amusing if I weren't still feeling the lingering heat in my cheeks. I gave him a tap on the shoulder to catch his attention. Oh, Velzard, what's up? He mumbled, reluctantly lowering his manga, and I crossed my arms. Veldora-kun, have you noticed anything different about Rimuru-kun? I asked, curiosity lacing every word. Veldora paused, scratching his head in thought. It was faint, but yeah, there's something there. Kind of like a true dragon factor, but just a weaker version. I smiled at his observation. Close. Rimuru now possesses a true dragon egg, something no one else has ever attained. Veldora's eyes widened, his mouth dropping open like a shocked character from his manga. What? How? When? I stifled a laugh at his reaction. A few days ago, I gave him a star remnant infused with my attributes. I never told him what to do with it, but I trusted he'd figure it out. So, you're saying all I had to do was give him a star remnant. Enzo, it should have been me, his sworn brother, who did it. He groaned dramatically, throwing himself back against the couch in defeat. Fufufu too slow, Veldora-kun. Better luck next time, I teased, savoring my small victory. He sighed, looking at me with a mixture of curiosity and excitement. So what now? Will he be able to evolve into a true dragon soon? I nodded. That's why I came to you. Rimuru will be able to evolve under the right conditions. When he does meet those conditions, that's where we come in. He will require our support, and having the two of us there will make the process far easier. An eager grin spread across Veldora's face, and I could practically see the flames of excitement in his eyes. Oh, so we'll get to assist in his evolution? Quahaha. Very well, Velzard nay. I chuckled at his enthusiasm and gave him an approving nod before returning to my room. Rimuru's POV. I landed gracefully in front of the Capitol and retracted my wings. As I entered the building and headed to my office, my thoughts drifted back to the true dragon egg I possessed. Seal had mentioned that I could evolve into a true dragon under the right conditions, which suggested I was nearing my growth ceiling. The realization that I was almost at my maximum potential somewhat bummed me out. But who knows? There may be room for growth after evolving into a true dragon. Seal, did my subordinates grow stronger after I obtained the true dragon egg? Yes. While your subordinates didn't evolve into a higher stage, they have surpassed the hard limits of their species. A select few of your strongest followers have become significantly stronger than what their races would typically allow. Amazing. How strong are they now? Diablo is currently on par with a true demon lord despite not having reached his final evolutionary stage. The others are equal to or slightly stronger than the former demon lords Carrion and Fry. Just what in the world did I create? I now have individuals of demon lord level as subordinates, and they can still get stronger. I honestly felt bad for the nations planning to oppose Tempest. At this rate, I might not even need to lift a finger to handle the opposition. A grin spread across my face as I embraced my status as a demon lord. By the way, what are the conditions for me to evolve into a true dragon? To reconstruct your composition and evolve, you need to consume the full force of a dragon spirit haki, and then devour a true dragon to gain their true dragon factor for analysis. Hold on, devour? Won't they be completely destroyed if I do so? No. The true dragon will be absorbed into the imaginary space of Azathoth for analysis. Afterwards, they can be safely released. Additionally, it is impossible to kill a true dragon completely. If one happens to be destroyed, it will simply resurrect after some time with all its memories intact. That's good to know. I could ask either Veldora or Velzard to assist me in my evolution. I recommend asking both of them. Velzard's Dragon Spirit Haki is incredibly potent and has unique properties I wish to analyze. Veldora's True Dragon Factor is optimal since he has the largest magicule capacity among the current True Dragons. So, I'll be asking both of them. Got it. Thanks again, Seal. No problem, Rimuru-sama. I eventually reached my office and entered. Sitting at my desk, I glanced at the paperwork awaiting my attention. Thankfully, there wasn't much. After some time, a knock echoed in the room, and Diablo entered before I could begin my work. In his hands, he held a scroll and a box. Unraveling the document, it detailed the official, signed peace treaty between Tempest and Falmouth. Meanwhile, the box contained 1,500 stellar gold coins as war reparations. Diablo began explaining the recent events in detail. King Idmalis had stepped down from the throne, as per our conditions. His brother, Edward, was declared the new king of Falmouth. The nobles had shifted all responsibility onto the royal family, leading to an impending civil war between them and the royalists. Everything was falling perfectly into place according to Diablo's master plan. The civil war would clear a path for Yum to take the throne of Falmouth. Once he became king, Tempest could establish friendly relations with their kingdom and nullify the remaining loan they owed. Man, Diablo is terrifying. He's exceptionally powerful, reliable, and cunning. And I'm delighted he's on my side. Chapter 7 Turmoil in the West. Flashback to a few days after Walpurgis. Third-person POV. Within the kingdom of Falmouth, inside a meeting hall, the king and his nobles were in turmoil, huddled in tense discussion over the three options presented to them by Diablo. The tension in the room was palpable, suffocating. They had only a week to decide, and the weight of their impending fate pressed heavily upon them like a physical burden. Each of the options laid before them spelled absolute disaster for Falmouth. The first was to become a vassal state of Tempest, an unthinkable proposition for the prideful nobles who would never accept such a blow to their honor. The second option required them to pay war reparations of a staggering 10,000 stellar gold coins, alongside the humiliating demand for King Edmaris to step down from his throne. The final option, continuing the war, was an absolute non-starter, given the ruinous state of the nation's army. Chaos reigned in the room. Nobles pointed fingers at one another, their voices rising in a cacophony of blame, each attempting to deflect responsibility while the king bore the crushing weight of their collective anxiety. While they begrudgingly agreed that the first option was out of the question, the debate over the remaining choices only intensified. Some, pragmatic in their fear, favored option 2, seeing it as the safest route to survival. Others, blinded by their waning pride, foolishly advocated for war, claiming the reparations were exorbitant, even suicidal. Suddenly, two knights burst into the room, their faces ashen and their movements frantic with urgency. One knight clutched a scroll in his trembling hands, his chest heaving. "Please forgive our intrusion. The guild has just made an important announcement," the breathless knight gasped. "Can't you see we're having a crucial discussion here?" A portly noble shouted, irritation flaring, his voice laced with disdain. "We understand, but you must hear this announcement now. The situation is extremely dire," the other knight pleaded, desperation raw in his voice. "Silence. Everyone, let them speak." The king's voice cut through the clamor, his tone brooking no argument, though a flicker of his own dread was barely concealed. The knight with the scroll unfurled it, his hands shaking slightly, and began to read its contents aloud, his voice attempting to remain steady despite the chaos around him. The Chancellor of the Great Jura Forest and the leader of the Monster Nation has just declared himself a demon lord, he announced, pausing for effect. The nobles, initially relieved by what they perceived as good news, did not fully comprehend the implications. A few even scoffed. Their ruler has made a foolish decision. The other demon lords won't tolerate such disrespect. I'm sure one of them will eliminate him, and this problem will solve itself," one noble declared optimistically, a smug smirk on his face. Most nobles nodded in agreement, exchanging similar, misguided remarks about Rimuru's so-called mistake. But their misplaced confidence quickly dissipated, dissolving like mist, as the knight continued. Following his declaration, the marionette master, Demon Lord Clayman, challenged him to a battle but was decisively defeated. This means Rimuru Tempest now holds his position on their council. The knight's voice cracked, a first hint of the true gravity of the news. Furthermore, the Beast Master, Carrion, and Sky Queen, Fry, have renounced their titles and joined the ranks of the Destroyer, Malim Nava. With only 8 of them remaining, they are now known as the Octagram, the 8-star Demon Lords, he continued. As the full weight of this revelation sank in, the room fell silent for a heartbeat, a chilling hush before chaos erupted again. Panic, sharp and visceral, gripped those present as they struggled to comprehend what they had just heard. "Oh boy, you can't be serious? That Clayman lost to the new self-proclaimed Demon Lord?" One noble shrieked, horror dawning on his face like a cold, cruel dawn. The gravity of the situation settled heavily on the gathered nobles. They began to realize the catastrophic ramifications of making an enemy out of Tempest. Regret seeped into their minds like poison, and the chilling realization washed over them. They were in far deeper trouble than they had ever imagined. But then, the knight's expression shifted, deepening from mere panic to one of true and utter despair, his eyes wide and vacant as he hesitated over the last, unspoken part of the announcement. There's one more announcement," he stammered, his voice barely a whisper, wavering as he struggled to maintain his composure. The sight of his ashen, pallid face sent a ripple of profound unease through the gathered nobles, and the tension in the room thickened, becoming a palpable, suffocating presence. All eyes were on him, every breath held in anticipation, as the atmosphere grew heavy with an almost unbearable dread. Whispers of uncertainty spread through the ranks, hushed and frantic, and the knight felt the collective weight of their terrified gazes pressing down on him like a collapsing mountain. "Please, just say it," one noble urged, his own voice trembling. But his plea only served to heighten the knight's anxiety, pushing him closer to the brink. Sweat beaded profusely on the knight's brow as he fought against the rising panic, his hands trembling violently as he gripped the scroll, crumpling the edges. After the conclusion of Walpurgis, a new individual joined Tempest and became one of the higher-ups. There was a big public announcement that day, debuting the new member of their nation. The individual in question, is none other than the Frost Dragon, Velzard, he finally blurted out, his voice a ragged, despairing gasp. As the knight managed to tear the name from his throat, his breath caught, and he choked out a sob. The words hung in the air like a noose tightening around their necks, and it felt as if time itself had stopped, utterly frozen in that horrific revelation. Silence enveloped the room, stretching into an eternity. No one dared to speak. The collective gasp of shock had morphed into a haunting, absolute stillness, broken only by the frantic beat of their own hearts. The nobles stood utterly frozen, their faces reflecting raw, visceral fear, stark, unwavering disbelief, and a deep, gnawing dread that settled in their bones. Panic began to rise, not as a wave, but as a chilling tide that swept through them as the full implications of Velzard's allegiance sank in. Some nobles felt utterly hopeless, instinctively dropping to whispered prayers, clutching at their holy insignias as if such trinkets could protect them from the coming storm. Others were in frantic disbelief, their minds racing with desperate thoughts of escape, plans to defect from Falmouth in a bid for sheer survival already forming. Amid this paralyzed turmoil, one noble's hands trembled so violently that his ornate silver cup slipped from his grasp, clattering and shattering on the stone floor. The sharp sound echoed through the deathly quiet room, jarring everyone, drawing their attention back to the grim, undeniable reality they faced. After what felt like an eon, the king finally shook off his stupor, his eyes slowly regaining focus. He managed to gather the scattered threads of his authority, pulling them back with visible effort. He cleared his throat, a dry, raspy sound, his voice low but attempting to be firm. "Everyone, we need to focus. We must resume our meeting and decide our course of action," he announced, trying desperately to project an air of command. But even as he spoke, the colossal, chilling weight of Velzard's name lingered, a dark, insurmountable shadow cast over their future, intensifying the dread that had already taken root deep in their hearts, threatening to consume them whole. Flashback to the evening after Walpurgis. Perched atop the sacred mountain in the holy empire of Libelius stood the inner sanctum of God. The leader of the 10 great saints, Hinata Sakaguchi, entered the hallowed halls, having just completed her daily patrol around the city. Today, she was meeting with her master, the Queen of Nightmares, Demon Lord Luminous Valentine. As Hinata stepped inside the church, she was greeted by the Holy Emperor of Libelius, Louis Valentine. Curiosity piqued, she inquired about his twin brother, Roy Valentine, only to learn that Roy had been killed on the night of Walpurgis by the very intruder she had scared off. A wave of distress washed over Hinata, and the thought of having let the perpetrator escape weighed heavily on her conscience. However, Louis urged her not to dwell on it too much. After a brief wait, the air shifted as their ruler, Luminous Valentine, the Queen of Nightmares, finally returned. Louis promptly updated Luminous on the tragic news of Roy's death. Luminous' expression darkened, a flicker of regret in her eyes. "Had I been there, he might yet live," she muttered, clicking her tongue. Luminous wasted no time in sharing the notable events that had unfolded during the Walpurgis meeting. Her tone, usually detached, now carried an edge of irritation. "The 10 great demon lords are no more. We are now the Octagram," she began, her gaze sharp. "Carrion and Fry have stepped down from their positions, a minor matter. Most alarmingly, there was the rise of the soul devourer, Rimuru Tempest," she said, closing her eyes. Then, as if recalling a bitter event, a flash of annoyance crossed her face. "And that insufferable storm dragon, Veldora, is now openly at his side." I never thought I'd see his face again, she hissed, turning her piercing gaze to Hinata. Hinata, you will not meddle with Demon Lord Rimuru. Do you understand? He is on a completely different level now, especially with that damn lizard by his side, Luminous commanded. Yet, ever stubborn and persistent, Hinata stood firm. That just makes him more of a threat, no? Allow me to stop him, she vowed. No. Luminous' voice cracked like a whip, her eyes narrowing. Rimuru Tempest desires coexistence with humanity. His nature is not violent, not unless provoked. You will leave him alone at all costs. Her words underscored the gravity of the situation. After taking a breath, Luminous spoke. Relay this message to the rest of the saints. This is not a request, she demanded. Having been cornered and denied, Hinata sighed and bowed. She headed down the sacred mountain after exchanging more information, her destination set on the home base of the Crusaders. Hinata stood before her fellow saints in the war tent, relaying the latest directive from Luminous. As she began to speak, their initial excitement crackled in the air. Each of them imagined the glory of storming into Tempest and unleashing chaos upon the Demon Lord's realm. However, Hinata quickly quelled their enthusiasm. Our God has commanded us not to engage with Rimuru Tempest. He must be left alone, Hinata announced, her voice firm, and the reaction was immediate and visceral. Outrage echoed in the tent as disbelief spread among the saints. Hey, are you serious, Hinata-sama? This is outrageous, Lytus exclaimed, incredulous, slamming a fist onto the table. Have you lost your mind? Grigori snapped, eyes wide with skepticism, his usual composure fractured. Hinata felt the tension rise as she defended the order. Demon Lord Rimuru's power has grown significantly, and the Storm Dragon stands at his side now, she asserted, but her words seemed to bounce off the walls, failing to penetrate the stubborn arrogance of her comrades. Though shaken slightly by the mention of the Storm Dragon, their confidence remained dangerously misplaced. They were largely ignorant of the true might of a true demon lord, let alone a true dragon. So, we need to act before he becomes too powerful, Ser shouted defiantly, raising a fist. Hinata relayed Luminous' message about Rimuru's desire for coexistence with humanity, but skepticism lingered like a foul odor. Just then, a messenger burst into the tent, his pale face revealing a fear that sent a shiver through the room. Pardon the intrusion. There's something I'd like to share with you all, he stammered, his voice barely masking the tremor of dread. The saints exchanged confused glances, their skepticism momentarily overshadowed by the palpable anxiety radiating from the man. They urged him to continue. There's a rumor spreading about a new member joining the higher-ups of Tempest. At first, I didn't believe it as I thought it was too absurd. But I kept hearing it, and after some investigation, I managed to get my hands on this, he said, before pulling out a crystal ball from his bag and placing it on the table. His hands trembled as he fiddled with the device. Why, you won't believe me if I just tell you. It's better if you see for yourselves, he added. The tension in the room thickened as all eyes fixed on the crystal ball, its glow illuminating their worried faces. The recording began to play, showing the perspective of an audience member within a crowd. A figure was standing majestically at the podium, his platinum blue hair waving gracefully in the wind. At first, they didn't recognize him, but the realization struck like lightning as the scene continued. Rimuru Tempest appeared before them, exuding an aura of divinity and authority that left them momentarily breathless. Is that? Fritz murmured in disbelief, taken aback by the unexpected visage of the Demon Lord. Rimuru's presence commanded attention, and the saints had their gazes fixed on the ball. However, that isn't why I called you all here today. I gathered you to formally introduce a new member of the Tempest executives. She holds a position of great importance, arguably equal to mine, and I expect you all to show her the same level of respect that you show me. His voice rang out from the device, clear and commanding. As the saints listened, their curiosity piqued. The camera shifted to reveal a woman with long white hair stepping gracefully to the center of the stage. Her presence was unsettlingly unassuming, almost frail, causing the saints to exchange puzzled glances. Is that the person everyone was talking about in those rumors? Bacchus asked incredulously, a scoff in his tone. Seriously? She looks so weak. What could she possibly do? Sarah commented bluntly, eliciting nods of agreement and a few dismissive chuckles. Hinata's annoyance flared. Quiet. You're all being foolish. The video isn't even finished yet, she scolded, a cold dread already beginning to grip her. Before they could respond, the scene continued. The woman closed her eyes, and a palpable surge of energy flooded the tent, emanating from the crystal ball. Her aura was powerful enough to make their skin prickle, their very bones vibrate. A collective shiver swept through them as they felt the overwhelming pressure of her presence, even from a mere recording a raw force that threatened to crush them. The audience in the video dropped to their knees, overwhelmed by the woman's presence as she spoke, her voice cutting through the silence. Greetings, dear citizens of Tempest. It is a pleasure to meet you all. My name is Velzard, the Frost Dragon. From this day forward, I will reside in this nation and serve as the personal supervisor of your lord, Rimuru Tempest. Her voice was smooth, yet it carried a level of power and authority that couldn't be matched, chilling them to their core. The recording concluded, leaving the room steeped in an agonizing, profound silence. Cold sweat trickled down the faces of the saints, their expressions utterly frozen in shock. Usually so composed, Hinata found herself speechless, her mind finally grasping the true, horrifying gravity of the situation now more than ever. Luminous warning echoed in her mind, no longer a reprimand, but a dire prophecy. Going against a true demon lord was already a foolhardy endeavor, but the Frost Dragon? That was an entirely different level of madness, an act of sheer, suicidal insanity. Humanity feared Veldora as the incarnation of chaos and destruction. Yet, Velzard's mere presence promised something even more terrifying, a cold, absolute dominion that made Veldora's rampages seem like mere temper tantrums. This latest news would not only shatter the foundations of their society, but also fundamentally alter the course of history itself. The dormant true dragon had made her first significant move in millennia, ensuring that the entire world would take notice. In the eyes of the Western nations, Tempest had, overnight, become a far more formidable, infinitely more dangerous threat than even the distant Eastern Empire. Hinata's POV. The silence in the room was deafening, pressing down on us like a heavy, suffocating blanket. The words of the Frost Dragon echoed in my mind, relentless and unsettling. If Rimuru Tempest had indeed evolved into a true demon lord, my chances of defeating him again were slim to none. The very thought sent a chill through me, tightening my chest with a cold dread. As if that weren't enough, the Storm Dragon stood at his side, a being whose existence transcended our understanding. And now, the strongest of the true dragons had just declared her allegiance to Tempest, aligning herself with an already formidable nation. The implications of this monumental shift were staggering, threatening to unravel the very fabric of our world. I felt the crushing weight of responsibility pressing heavily on my shoulders. Everyone, I called out, my voice sharp, a desperate attempt to cut through the paralyzing tension. Why yes, Hinata-sama? Lytis stammered, her voice still shaky from the raw power witnessed in the video. The unease was palpable among the saints, their expressions a desperate mix of shock, disbelief, and burgeoning fear. I've decided to go to Tempest in a few days and personally apologize to Rimuru Tempest, I declared, my tone deliberately nonchalant, as if discussing the most trivial weather forecast. The response was immediate and chaotic. Why, you can't be serious, Hinata-sama? Fritz's voice rose an octave, his eyes wide with incredulity, nearly bulging from his skull. Are you trying to get yourself killed? Glenda interjected angrily, her fists clenched at her sides. Have you gone mad? Sayre's loud outburst pierced through the room, adding to the cacophony of panicked voices a rising tide of dissent. I raised my hand, a gesture of command that demanded silence. The uproar subsided, though the air still crackled with barely contained tension, a volatile energy simmering beneath the surface. Relax. From what our god said, Demon Lord Rimuru is a non-violent individual who only wishes to coexist with humanity and use his immense power to create a peaceful life for himself and his people, I explained, trying to inject some desperately needed reason into the brewing chaos. Yet, my words barely settled over them. They hung in the air like a thin, unconvincing mist. I could see the doubt lingering, thick and stubborn, in their eyes. Yeah, he might be a pacifist, sure. But you literally tried to kill him. Grigori shot back, his voice filled with disbelief and genuine concern, his exasperation clear. Such a great idea. Go to the territory of the dude you tried and failed to kill, Sayre added, his tone dripping with sarcasm, his emphasis on my failure biting deep a venomous barb. I felt my temper flare, a hot flush rising to my cheeks. Shut up, brat. There's no way in hell you could have done better, I snapped, feeling the frustration bubbling to the surface. He merely rolled his eyes in response, dismissing my indignation with a casual wave of his hand, infuriating me further. I swear. Despite the chaotic uproar, I knew that I had to maintain my resolve. It took a considerable amount of strained convincing and countless appeals to logic and survival to get the Saints on board with my perilous plan. But eventually, after much debate and thinly veiled threats from me, we all agreed to approach Tempest with absolutely no hostility whatsoever. My primary goal was clear. I needed to apologize directly to Rimuru. Just as the meeting began to stabilize, a sudden commotion at the tent flap announced the unannounced arrival of the Holy Emperor, Pope Louis Valentine. The other saints looked at one another in astonished silence as he entered, his imposing presence immediately commanding the room's attention. To my surprise, he voiced his unequivocal support for my controversial decision to apologize. I agree with your course of action, Hinata. We must mend this relationship before it gets worse. This is a matter of our very survival, he declared, his voice resonating with an unexpected authority that quelled any further dissent. And with that, the shock among the saints was palpable, their last arguments dissolving. Our perilous journey to Tempest was set in motion, a path fraught with uncertainty, yet undeniably necessary. As we prepared for the trip, a heavy mix of anticipation and dread settled deep in my stomach. Would Rimuru accept my apology, or would I be met with hostility, perhaps even retribution? The stakes had never felt higher, and I steeled myself for the challenges that lay ahead, hoping against hope that reason, not wrath, would prevail. Third-person POV. The 10 great saints departed for Tempest, leaving behind an atmosphere within the holy empire of Libelius that was anything but calm. Far from the grand halls of power, in their hidden conclaves, panic had taken hold of the 7 celestial sages. They scrambled frantically, their meticulously crafted plans in shambles before they had even begun. These people, cloaked in self-proclaimed divine wisdom, had originally schemed to orchestrate a dramatic misunderstanding. Their design was to deliver a falsified recording, a message supposedly from Rimuru Tempest requesting an audience with Hinata. They envisioned a confrontation, a duel of power and pride, that would inevitably lead to Hinata's demise at his hands, or at the very least, a severe weakening that would leave her utterly vulnerable to their subsequent assault. It was a high-stakes gamble they were willing to take, one they believed would pay off handsomely in their twisted pursuit of control. However, the shocking news of Velzard's unambiguous presence in Tempest sent their carefully laid plans spiraling into utter chaos. The Frost Dragon, a living legend with insurmountable power, was not something they had accounted for in their intricate calculations. While they had vaguely speculated on the potential for mischief or minor political instability in the burgeoning monster nation, the sheer, undeniable presence of Velzard acted as an impenetrable barrier that would thwart all attempts at sowing discord or manipulation. The sages exchanged nervous glances, their faces pale beneath their hoods, their minds racing with the chilling realization that they could no longer provoke Hinata into a reckless, suicidal confrontation with Rimuru. The dread settled in their hearts like a stone, heavy and unyielding, threatening to crack their carefully constructed superiority. Their window of opportunity was not merely closing, but had slammed shut, leaving them with little recourse but to watch the unfolding events with growing, impotent anxiety. A few days had passed, and back in Tempest, the nation was not merely surviving. It was thriving like never before. The very air was charged with infectious optimism, and the economy boomed. Trade routes had expanded significantly, weaving a complex web that connected Tempest to neighboring realms and beyond, bringing a prosperity that had once seemed like a distant, impossible dream. Agriculture flourished, its fields yielding bountiful harvests. Industries hummed with unprecedented activity, churning out innovations. Technological advancements occurred at a dizzying pace, transforming the landscape into a beacon of modernity and progress that would astonish any visitor. But the most remarkable development of all was the subtle, yet profound influence of Rimuru's acquisition of a true dragon egg. This extraordinary, latent blessing not only bolstered his own power, but also subtly invigorated his people, enabling them to grow and evolve in unexpected ways, even without reaching higher evolutionary stages. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in dramatic hues of orange, purple, and crimson, Rimuru finished his work for the day. He stepped outside, taking a moment to breathe in the vibrant, intoxicating nightlife that now enveloped the city. At his side was Velzard, his beautiful supervisor, who had, in a remarkably short time, become an integral part of Tempest's new identity. The two wandered through the illuminated streets, enjoying the lively ambience, their presence a quiet, powerful statement. But unbeknownst to them, rumors began to swirl among the citizens of Tempest, fueled by the undeniable, almost visible chemistry they displayed during their outings. Whispers of a romantic relationship between Rimuru and Velzard spread like wildfire through the taverns and homes, igniting the imaginations of those around them. Meanwhile, the contrast between the flourishing country of Tempest and the increasingly desperate, self-inflicted turmoil of the Western nations couldn't have been more stark. While Tempest surged forward, a monument to foresight and cooperation under the dynamic leadership of Rimuru, the West found itself tangled in a web of its own making, its ambitions thwarted and its plans dashed against the immutable rocks of a new, formidable reality. Rimuru's POV. Man, it sure is nice to wind down every once in a while. I'm still amazed at how good a supervisor she is. Velzard had helped me craft the recording I sent to Hinata, ensuring I worded everything just right to avoid any potential misunderstandings. The only way that could happen is if the video in the crystal ball was tampered with. Now this is the life I've been missing out on, Velzard exclaimed, her voice light and cheerful. A loud voice echoed through my mind, cutting through the swirling confusion. Oi, Rimuru, where are you? I need the next volume of Jujutsu Kaisen now. I looked everywhere in the library and couldn't find it. Veldora interrupted through thought communication, and his urgency was evident even in my heightened thoughts. If you told past me that I would be thankful for Veldora interrupting me in the future, I would have laughed in your face. But he actually came in clutch. Thank you so much, sworn brother. Now was my perfect opportunity to escape, though it could potentially throw Veldora under the bus. I'm sure he'll be fine, but if not, I'll make it up to him in the future. Yes, Veldora. Perfect timing. I'll be there shortly. Hold on. I replied hastily, the urgency in my voice barely masking my profound relief. You're usually annoyed when I interrupt you like this. What happened, Rimuru? He asked, confusion tinging his tone, clearly oblivious to the real situation. Nothing much. You just came in clutch. I'll be there in a few minutes. I lied, hoping he couldn't hear the slight tremor in my voice. Quahaha. I'm glad I could help. Now come on, he insisted, his booming laughter echoing in my mind a symphony of salvation. Heading there now, I said before closing the channel. A profound wave of gratitude washed over me for his impeccable timing. Reluctantly, sorry, Velzard. It's getting late now, and Veldora just called me for something urgent, I said softly, trying to keep my tone light and apologetic. Velzard's expression shifted, and she looked down, a slight frown tugging at her lips. The sight struck me like an arrow to the chest. Damn it all, not wanting to see her like this. Let's go home, Velz-chan. Today's been hectic, and we both deserve some rest, I said while manifesting my clothes back onto my body, feeling the fabric settle comfortably against my skin. We exited the hot spring and walked back home as the night air turned cooler, the clock edging closer to midnight. It seemed I was winning more of my teasing battles against Velzard, though in all seriousness, I wasn't entirely sure how I truly felt about her, and I suspected she might be in the same boat. We have been growing closer since she moved to Tempest and became my supervisor. She had guided me immensely in my development as a ruler and a fighter. In both of my lives, I had never truly experienced love. I wasn't even sure what it felt like. Sure, I had crushes and admired people from afar, but any attempts at confessing my feelings had fizzled out before they ever really began, leaving me with a sense of unfulfilled longing. My relationship with Velzard was peculiar, yet undeniably enjoyable. Despite her quirky and sometimes terrifying personality, she was someone I could connect with on a depth I hadn't thought possible. We had transitioned from mere acquaintances to close friends, and I found profound comfort and a thrilling novelty in that progression. I need to sort out my feelings to figure out if this burgeoning excitement was just a fleeting thrill from my first real encounter with such intimacy, or if I genuinely held deeper, more profound feelings for her. And I hope Velzard would do the same. Her teasing had begun as playful banter but had gradually, undeniably, evolved into something far more substantial. Despite being millennia old, she seemed remarkably inexperienced in matters of romantic love or relationships, which suggested this was likely new territory for her as well. Regardless of where our relationship would head from here, I was sure it would only grow more interesting, more complex, and more deeply intertwined with each passing day. Rimuru's current stats. Name: Rimuru Tempest. EP: 25,705,899, plus 507,245 with jet black sword. Race: Demon Slime. Blessing: Crest of the Storm. Titles: Demon Lord, King of Tempest, Soul Devourer, True Demon Lord. Magic: Aspectual Magic, Dark Magic, Elemental Magic, Engraving Magic, Holy Magic, Illusion Magic, Physics Magic, Summoning Magic, True Dragon Magic, Storm Frost. Manus, Seal. Intrinsic Skills: Demon Lord's Haki, Universal Perception, Universal Shapeshift. Ultimate Skills: God of the Void, Azathoth, Imaginary Collapse, Imaginary Space, Multidimensional Barrier, Soul Gluttony, Space-Time Domination, True Dragon Nucleation, Storm Frost, True Dragon Release, Storm Frost. God of Harvest, Shub Nigurath, Skill Creation, Skill Duplication, Skill Gifting, Skill Nullification, Skill Storage. Tolerances: Abnormal Condition Nullification, Holy Demonic Attack Resistance, Natural Elements Nullification, Pain Nullification, Physical Attack Nullification, Spiritual Attack Resistance. Chapter 8: Demon Lord vs. Saint. Hinata's POV. It took over a week, but we finally crossed Tempest's borders. To my surprise, the journey had been utterly uneventful and peacefully serene. Not a single violent monster had crossed our path, and the roads were surprisingly well maintained and smoothly paved, a stark contrast to the rutted paths of the Holy Empire. From the intel I'd received, Tempest was a nation of monsters, nothing more. Still, the extent of its development was far beyond anything I had expected. It had become a bustling hub for merchants from the east and west, with an undeniably strong economic pulse. Not to mention, its infrastructure was impeccable. I must say, I wasn't expecting their roads to be this clean and safe, Fritz remarked, his voice genuine and tinged with surprise, his gaze sweeping across the pristine pathway. The others nodded, murmuring their agreement, their eyes wide as they scanned the orderly landscape, clearly impressed despite themselves. I'm surprised too, I admitted, adjusting my stance, a flicker of grudging respect crossing my face. Considering Demon Lord Rimuru is a reincarnated otherworlder, his knowledge of infrastructure is likely quite advanced, I explained, trying to temper their awe with reasoning. I still can't fathom the idea of being reincarnated as a slime. How does he even manage a human form? Sayre pondered aloud, his voice filled with genuine curiosity, almost a scientific intrigue. I raised an eyebrow at his wonder, but answered calmly. It must have been difficult at first, but with how powerful he's become, it's likely no longer a problem. He probably uses magicules to maintain it. I replied with a casual shrug, a logical conclusion in this world of absurdity. As we walked, the smoothly paved road stretched ahead, and the city's distant silhouette grew more apparent, its elegant spires glinting in the morning light. After about half an hour, we reached Tempest's grand entrance. I noted the shimmering magic barrier surrounding the entire city, a translucent dome that hinted at formidable defenses, though we weren't sure of its specific function. Still, we proceeded without hesitation, curiosity driving us forward. Security was surprisingly light, almost casual. After a quick, efficient check by a pair of polite ogres, we passed through the barrier, entering Tempest's capital without any issues. And then we were greeted by a sight that nearly left us all speechless. To say we were shocked would be an understatement. The fragmented, often biased information we'd gathered about Tempest didn't even begin to compare to the vibrant, breathtaking reality that lay before us. The streets were bustling with life, a kaleidoscope of activity. The atmosphere was palpably lively. Monsters of every conceivable shape and size coexisted peacefully. Hobgoblins bartering with orcs, lizardmen strolling alongside lycanthropes, all living out their daily lives without a hint of fear or animosity. Even humans wandered the streets freely, trading goods and exchanging pleasantries, their laughter mingling with the melodic chatter of their monstrous counterparts. It was as if there was a palpable sense of harmony, a gentle, unifying hum in the very air. This place was no primitive monster settlement, but a thriving, modern metropolis, a marvel of urban planning and societal integration that could easily rival the most prosperous human nations. The other saints stared wide-eyed at the wondrous sights around them. Their mouths hung slightly agape, their expressions a mix of awe and disbelief. It was as if they had all been transported into a different world entirely, one that utterly defied all their preconceived notions and expectations. Even I, who had been thoroughly briefed on Tempest's meteoric rise, couldn't suppress my own profound awe. All around us, the streets gleamed with an almost impossible cleanliness. The buildings were exquisitely crafted, blending natural aesthetics with functional design. And the diverse populace moved with an undeniable purpose and ease, a stark contrast to the rigid, often fearful demeanor of our own citizens. Then, my attention was caught by something that made my heart skip a beat, a sudden, sharp pang of nostalgia. I spotted several restaurants along the street, their facades exuding a familiar, comforting aesthetic. Each one served food that immediately reminded me of my homeland, a taste of Japan suddenly within reach. Without thinking, I began walking toward a particular Japanese-themed restaurant, its inviting aroma drawing me in, eager to try the cuisine I had been missing for so long. "Oi, Hinata-sama, where are you going?" Arnaud's voice called out from behind me, his tone laced with confusion and a hint of alarm as he noticed I had abruptly wandered off from the group. I didn't respond. The craving was too intense, too overwhelming to ignore. I continued on my determined path, and soon enough, the others, with a mix of bewildered and hesitant steps, followed suit. Once inside, I was greeted by the mouth-watering scent of miso, soy, and freshly grilled fish. It was rich and savory, a compelling, almost painful reminder of the exquisite flavors I had left behind in my world. "Whoa, the food smells amazing," Fritz exclaimed, his eyes wide as he looked around the tastefully decorated interior. "Right, Hinata-sama, we absolutely must eat here." Light's voice bubbled with infectious excitement, a rare display of unreserved joy. I simply nodded, my mouth watering in anticipation, already imagining the taste. We approached the counter, ordered our food, and settled at a large, polished wooden table. The service was prompt and efficient, and the staff, a charming mix of humans and monsters, were polite beyond measure as they delivered our food with warm, genuine smiles. But the true star, however, lay in the food. It was divine. The others dug in with uncharacteristic fervor, their expressions shifting from skepticism to sheer, unadulterated bliss with each bite. I was no different. Each morsel was like a small piece of heaven, bursting with delicate flavors I hadn't tasted in so long. A connection to a life I thought was irrevocably lost. I savored each mouthful, enjoying the rare, exquisite treat of food from my world. Once the meal was finished, leaving us thoroughly satisfied, we reluctantly left the restaurant. Upon setting foot onto the streets, we were left utterly dazed. Tempest was so vast, the city so sprawling, that we found ourselves utterly lost in the intricate maze of its streets. We asked a passing orc for directions to the Capitol building, and he courteously provided them, pointing us down a wide avenue. As we walked, the others chattered aimlessly, discussing trivial matters, their earlier awe slowly giving way to comfortable curiosity. Still, I remained largely silent, too absorbed in the city's overwhelming beauty and palpable energy to focus on their conversation. The profound sense of awe hadn't quite worn off. Minutes later, we spotted a red-haired Kijin ahead of us who appeared to be patrolling. He wore a sheathed katana at his side, exuding a quiet yet palpable aura of power that immediately set my senses on edge. The others may not have noticed, or perhaps simply disregarded it, but I felt it immediately, the faint, insistent tingle of a profoundly dangerous presence. He was no ordinary soldier, that much was clear. The Kijin noticed us almost immediately, his sharp crimson eyes narrowing slightly in surprise before he began walking toward us with measured, confident steps. The air around us seemed to thrum with a subtle tension as he approached, though none of us dared to outwardly show it. When he was a few meters away, he stopped, eyeing us with a mild, almost thoughtful confusion. "Well, this is unexpected," the Kijin remarked, his tone even. He looked at us, and we exchanged looks of genuine bewilderment, none of us understanding what he meant. "You guys came earlier than expected, though I guess that's fine," he said, shrugging, a casual gesture that unnerved us. Before we could even utter a single word, he turned on his heel, raising a hand. "I'll go inform Rimuru-sama of your arrival," he added. Wait. What are you talking about? Was Demon Lord Rimuru expecting us? I asked, the confusion apparent in my voice, a knot of unease already forming in my stomach. He stopped, turning to face us again, his brow furrowed in mild confusion. "Rimuru-sama requested your arrival. In fact, he even sent a crystal ball to deliver his message to you directly, Hinata-san," he replied, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. "You didn't get it?" he asked, his gaze sweeping over the others, who merely exchanged more confused looks. Hearing that, a cold certainty settled in my gut. A message from Demon Lord Rimuru? A crystal ball? That didn't make sense. We hadn't received anything remotely like that. If what he was saying was true, then someone must have intercepted it before it could reach us. But why? What could possibly motivate someone to do that? Just then, it clicked in my mind. The 7 celestial sages. Those damn bastards have been trying to bring me down at every turn. I wouldn't be surprised if they were behind this, manipulating events to their own sinister ends. "My apologies, Kijin-san," I began, bowing respectfully, pushing down my simmering anger. "But we never actually received the message you're referring to. Someone must have stolen the crystal ball before it could reach us. We came here of our own accord to speak with Demon Lord Rimuru," I said, the truth tinged with a newfound urgency. My peers exchanged confused glances, clearly still piecing things together, while the Kijin appeared deep in thought. That is possible. It would explain why you're here earlier than expected," he mused, stroking his chin. His eyes, however, seemed to hold a deeper understanding. "Also, the name's Benimaru, and I'm the commander-in-chief of Tempest's military." He introduced himself with a proud, dignified air, his posture straightening slightly. Our eyes widened in collective shock. To think someone of such high standing, the leader of their military, would be roaming the city so casually, without a visible retinue. It defied all our expectations of how a monster nation would operate. "Ha. I'm also not a Kijin, though I can see how you'd mistake me," he added with a light chuckle, a hint of amusement in his voice. Pardon us, then. We could have sworn you were a Kijin, Benimaru-dano. From what we knew, Kijins lived here," Ser said, his surprise evident, a faint blush of embarrassment on his face. Indeed, our intelligence indicated that the ogres here had evolved into key genes under Rimuru Tempest's influence. We thought you were one of them, Lightus chimed in. That was true just over a month ago, but not anymore. Benimaru paused, his eyes glinting. The key genes in Tempest have evolved into Onis, he finally revealed. What? We exclaimed in unison, the word tearing from our throats as our jaws collectively dropped. No wonder I felt such intense pressure radiating from him despite his concealed aura. He's a damn Oni. My battle instincts were on high alert, screaming danger in all directions. And I was right. Onis are thought to be mythical beings, ancient entities, the root races of both ogre and Kijin. They're spiritual life forms with an immense amount of energy, rivaling even demon lord seeds. I'll go inform Rimuru-sama ahead. You all can follow me to the capital, Benimaru said, waving off our stunned state with casual indifference, as if revealing his species was an everyday occurrence. We shared a brief, bewildered look before nodding in dazed agreement, still reeling from the shocking revelation. Benimaru led the way, his stride unhurried, and we followed him to the Capitol building. As we approached, its scale became even more impressive. Up close, it was an architectural marvel, far grander and more intricate than any structure we had observed in the city's exterior. Its design spoke not merely of grandeur, but of profound power and advanced civilization. Upon entering, our amazement only grew. The interior was vast, adorned with intricate carvings and elegant, yet functional, furnishings. It was beautifully decorated, meticulously maintained, and surprisingly warm. Monsters, primarily hobgoblins, but mixed with various other species like orcs, lizardmen, and even a few others with surprisingly sophisticated attire, diligently did their work. They moved with purpose, their focused activity creating a harmonious buzz, a stark contrast to the rigid, often fearful atmosphere of human administrative buildings. Please wait here, Benimaru requested politely, gesturing toward a set of opulent, comfortable lobby couches. We nodded, took a seat, and briefly settled into the quiet, absorbing our surroundings. The soft cushions of the couch were surprisingly comfortable, a small detail that further chipped away at our preconceptions. Benimaru ascended a grand, winding staircase and disappeared into a hallway, leaving us in a somewhat awkward, heavy silence. Our group was still visibly processing the multitude of astonishing facts we'd just learned about this nation, this true monster paradise. After a few minutes, unable to bear the silent processing any longer, I broke the quiet. So what are your thoughts? About this nation, I mean, I asked, my tone filled with genuine curiosity, hoping to prompt a much-needed discussion. They mulled it over, thinking carefully, the gears of their indoctrinated minds visibly grinding against the undeniable reality. This place is incredible, I won't lie. It's far beyond what I ever imagined a monster nation could be, Fritz said, shaking his head slightly in disbelief. Absolutely. The cleanliness, the order, the sheer prosperity, it's as if they built a human nation, then improved upon it, Glinda agreed, her voice hushed. While it's not as anciently advanced as some of Ingracia's or Lobelia, the fact that it's barely 2 years old and already this developed is ridiculous, Fritz continued, the admission clearly costing him. We nodded in agreement, and Lightus, still looking a bit dazed, chimed in. Aside from their absurd development speed, the people here seem genuinely happy. They're living good lives. I saw monsters and humans openly cooperating in the markets, laughing together, which defies everything we've been taught. Her voice trailed off, a hint of confusion in her tone. Indeed, the way they interacted wasn't forced. It makes you question, Grigori murmured, rubbing his temples. He didn't finish the thought, but the implication hung heavy in the air. But what really caught my attention is how strong everyone is, Sir pointed out loudly, snapping his fingers. I'm sure you all noticed it too. Every single monster here has a name, and they've all undergone a higher evolution. Even those hobgoblins had a subtle strength about them. It's unnatural, he added, unable to contain his disbelief, his face a mask of incredulity. That's definitely true, I said, leaning forward, my voice serious. You all sensed it, right? That Oni we met is no joke. From a single glance, I could tell I'd struggle to fight him, and I'm not even sure I'd win. He holds the power of a spiritual life form. I admitted, albeit reluctantly, the words a bitter taste in my mouth. They were stunned that I was praising a monster to such an extent. But none spoke up. None dared to refute my claim after having sensed Benimaru's overwhelming raw strength firsthand. The implications of my admission hung heavy, silencing any lingering arrogance. Yo, sorry I couldn't greet you all more formally. Didn't expect such an early arrival. A cheerful voice suddenly greeted us, clear as a bell, yet possessing an undeniable weight. We whipped our heads around, startled, our eyes landing on a beautiful maiden with long platinum blue hair. It took us a disorienting moment to realize who the person was, or rather, who he was. Standing with all the majesty and subtle power of a true demon lord was none other than Rimuru Tempest. He had hidden his presence so completely, so utterly, that we hadn't even noticed him until now. When he came into full view, the pressure in the air thickened, growing dense with his sheer, undeniable presence. Without a moment's thought, we all stood up and bowed deeply, instinctively, in profound respect. We are honored to be in your presence, Demon Lord Rimuru Tempest. We said in unison, our voices laced with awe, a tremor of fear running beneath. Ha, no need to be so formal with me, Rimuru chuckled, waving us off casually, his smile easy. Raise your heads, everyone. I technically invited you all, but I guess the message never made it to you, he said, scratching the back of his head. We all exhaled in a collective sigh of relief, grateful for his easygoing nature, which was a stark contrast to the imposing aura he still exuded. The crystal ball you sent was likely stolen by a third party on its way to us, Rimuru-san, I explained, the words feeling heavy on my tongue. He nodded in understanding. Yeah, that makes the most sense. Don't worry. One of my subordinates is already looking into it, he replied, his tone reassuring, though a subtle shift, a faint tightening around his eyes, hinted at something more. Just then, a distortion in space appeared beside Rimuru, shimmering like disturbed air, and we all tensed instinctively, our hands hovering near our weapons. The distortion vanished almost immediately, and a beautiful woman with long white hair styled in twintails stepped out. Her aura exuded an air of serenity and grace, yet it was undeniably vast and immense as she landed gracefully on the ground. Your guests have arrived earlier than expected, Rimuru-kun, the woman said softly, her voice like chimes. Ah yes, welcome back, Velzard, he replied happily, a genuine warmth in his tone. Velzard-sama? We all exclaimed in unison, the name tearing from our lips, dropping to our knees instinctively, overwhelmed by the sheer, crushing presence of the woman who had just appeared before us. Hello, visitors. Welcome to Tempest. I hope you all have a pleasant stay here, she greeted with a light and graceful bow, her eyes sparkling with amusement. Hey, Velz-chan. That's supposed to be my line, Rimuru said dryly, a playful pout on his lips. But you didn't say anything, Rimuru-kun. As the de facto second in command and your supervisor, I had to greet your guests, she teased. Rimuru sighed in response, a familiar exasperation. I couldn't help but observe the two's interactions. From what we had gathered from the recordings, Velzard was Rimuru's supervisor. However, their easy banter, the nicknames, and the sheer casualness of their interaction clearly went beyond simple formalities. Most beings would prostrate themselves before the mightiest of the true dragons alive. Yet here Rimuru was, being as casual as possible, joking with her, and even using playful nicknames. The sight was utterly surreal, almost blasphemous to our understanding of power dynamics. Could they possibly be involved in a romantic relationship? If that were true, then the world would not merely turn upside down. It would be utterly redefined. Shaking the thought from my head, I focused on the pressing matter at hand. I joined the other saints, still processing the bewildering reality of the situation. Anyway, if you're wondering why I requested you to come here, it's to have a peace talk. But seeing as you all came here of your own accord, you must have your reasons, correct? Rimuru asked, his gaze sweeping over us, unexpectedly gentle. His statement about the peace talk caught us off guard, a collective shiver of relief passing through the saints. Luminous had been right about Rimuru's pacifism. Indeed. Truthfully, I came here to apologize to you, Rimuru-san. I began, my voice steady, though my heart pounded. After reflecting on my actions during your visit to Ingracia, I realized I was acting rashly, driven by misguided judgment. I am not seeking your forgiveness, only offering my sincerest, deepest apology. I'm truly sorry, Rimuru-san, I said, bowing deeply in respect, my head lowered, baring my neck. My comrades kept their mouths shut, eyes darting nervously between me and Rimuru looked at me with a genuinely surprised expression, his easy smile fading slightly. For a moment, the world fell silent. The lack of sound was nearly suffocating, pressing in on me like a physical weight, but I held on, maintaining my bowed posture. Eventually, Rimuru spoke. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, Hinata. His voice had dropped, the cheerful tone replaced by a low, measured rumble that vibrated with barely contained power. His eyes, usually so soft, sharpened, a dangerous, simmering golden glow appearing in their depths. Your actions and the devastating results that followed really did piss me off. Just thinking about it brings back some awful, truly awful memories. The suffering you caused my people. He paused. The air in the room grew heavy and chilling, the latent rage of a true demon lord making its presence known. The others gulped in unison, their faces paling, but we all stayed silent, frozen in place, waiting for him to continue, for the inevitable judgment. However, he added, his demeanor shifted, incredibly, almost jarringly, his previous irritation giving way to a sudden, almost forced lightheartedness, though the golden glint in his eyes remained. If it weren't for that happening, I doubt I would have evolved and become a demon lord. In a roundabout way, you ended up helping me, he said. We were still tense, every nerve on edge, waiting for what he would say next, unsure if his light tone was genuine or a cruel prelude. I'm also not one to hold grudges, at least not indefinitely. His voice softened, and the golden glint in his eyes receded. You probably already know, but I was once human too. It might go against your expectations of a demon lord, but I forgive you, he said, his smile returning, full and genuine. A collective, shuddering sigh of relief escaped our lips, some saints nearly collapsing from the sudden release of tension. But then, Rimuru raised his hand, halting our relief mid-sigh. But I will only forgive you if you fulfill one favor, he exclaimed, his playful smirk returning, the earlier darkness completely gone. My comrades looked at me nervously, their eyes wide with renewed apprehension, but I nodded in confirmation, ready for anything. They were terrified at what might come next, but I felt a strange sense of obligation. I would be happy to oblige, Rimuru-san, I replied, my voice steadier now. Rimuru's grin widened at my response. Then I'd like to challenge you to a duel, one-on-one, he announced, his eyes sparkling with competitive fire. A duel? We all stared at him, utterly shocked. His request left us absolutely speechless. Don't worry, it won't be a battle to the death, but I'd like it if we both gave it our all. I've been eager to rematch you since we first fought under those totally unfair conditions. Rimuru scoffed, his cheeks puffing slightly, clearly still hung up on the barrier that had interfered during our first fight. Rimuru is a sore loser, Velzard teased, a delicate laugh escaping her lips, clearly enjoying the moment. Shut up, Rimuru snapped, a genuinely flustered blush rising on his cheeks. Velzard only giggled in response, delighted. In all honesty, if we faced off today, the roles would definitely reverse. I'd be the one at a major disadvantage, I admitted half-jokingly, still trying to lighten the mood with a touch of self-deprecation. I wouldn't be so sure about that, Rimuru replied, his gaze sharpening, taking on a surprisingly serious glint. Judging from your strength, you're on par with one of my strongest subordinates. I believe you've met Benimaru-kun already, he remarked. We nodded in acknowledgement. Even at a glance, I could see that Benimaru's strength was no joke. My earlier admission of struggling against him now felt even more justified. If it's a duel you want, I'll gladly give you one. But please hold back. I might not make it out alive. I joked, attempting to lighten the gravity of the situation, though a part of me truly feared his power. Excellent. Then it's settled. Let's do it now. After that, we'll give you guys a tour around Tempest. Rimuru beamed, his excitement palpable, practically vibrating. Wait, what? I blurted out, taken completely aback by his sudden, energetic enthusiasm. In the blink of an eye, the world around us blurred. We found ourselves outside the city, the open sky above. We had been instantly teleported, a feat of magic beyond our comprehension. My allies were left disoriented, some stumbling, others outright falling to the ground, gasping. Now, we stood in a large, open area far away from the civilian population. Let me know when you're ready. Rimuru called out, already taking a stance. Geez, you could have given us a warning, you know? I replied, scratching my head in utter exasperation, my mind still reeling from the instantaneous transfer. Rimuru only smiled in response, his casual demeanor an unnerving mask over the formidable intensity of the situation. There was no going back now. The challenge had been laid, and I would meet it with everything I had. Unsheathing my rapier, Moonlight, its blade gleaming faintly in the afternoon sun, I equipped my holy armaments. A surge of holy power coursed through me, temporarily elevating me to the level of a complete saint, sharpening every fiber of my being. My stance was low, defensive yet poised for a devastating strike. There would be no room for hesitation in this duel. My opponent was leagues beyond me in strength, and I couldn't afford to hold anything back. Velzard, with a swift, almost ethereal movement, teleported herself and my comrades hundreds of meters away, leaving Rimuru and me alone on the vast, empty training ground. With a casual snap of her fingers, a barrier composed of innumerable, glittering ice crystals sprang up around us. The atmosphere within immediately shifted, the temperature dropping sharply, creating a visible mist with each breath. Rimuru remained utterly unmoved. He stood idle, watching me, a faint, almost amused smile playing on his lips. He was waiting. The air thickened with palpable tension as I steeled my resolve, every muscle taut, preparing for what I knew would be an almost impossible uphill battle against him. Taking a deep, steadying breath, I exploded forward, dashing with all the speed I could muster, my rapier a silver blur aimed precisely at his neck. My thrust was swift, utterly precise, a strike designed to end the fight before it truly began. Yet, he hadn't even moved. Clang. The air snapped with a deafening metallic crack as our swords collided with unimaginable force. My blade, imbued with my full strength, was mere inches from his neck when, in the span of a single, imperceptible heartbeat, he drew his own sword and blocked my attack effortlessly. The sheer shock of it rattled me to my core, sending vibrations up my arm that threatened to dislocate my shoulder. Seeing his devious grin widen, a chill ran down my spine, and I immediately leaped back, widening the distance between us, my heart hammering against my ribs. What the hell was that? I was temporarily elevated to the level of a true demon lord, empowered by my complete saint form, yet I was still too slow. My blade should have struck him. It should have been a clean hit. But there was no way. He was toying with me, playing with my expectations, and the crushing realization made my stomach churn with humiliation. Rimuru then did something I didn't expect, something that seemed to mock my every effort. Standing perfectly still, he casually sheathed his sword. It was a dismissal, an unspoken declaration that he didn't even need a weapon against me, making me pause. That brief moment was enough for me to hesitate. In the blink of an eye, he was directly in front of me, a phantom blur. My instincts screamed in every fiber of my being as his fist rocketed toward me at a speed I couldn't possibly process in time. I only had a split second to react. In a desperate, last-ditch attempt to mitigate the attack, I raised Moonlight, its sharp edge a futile shield, to block his punch. The impact was cataclysmic. A dull thud followed by a violent expulsion of air. It felt less like a punch and more like a battering ram made of pure, condensed force. The blow sent me flying backward, crashing through the air like a rag doll and skidding across the ground for several dozen meters, leaving a deep furrow in the earth. My arms screamed in agony, feeling like they had utterly shattered. The force of his strike was more than enough to break bones, to pulverize my very being, if I weren't so hardened by my evolution and years of brutal experience. He really just punched a legend-grade weapon like it was nothing. At this point, this wasn't a duel anymore. This was him having fun, a cat playing with a mouse, and I was nothing more than his plaything, his personal punching bag. Regaining my footing, albeit shakily, I focused, activating my unique skills, usurper and mathematician in tandem. A desperate hope flickered within me. I poured my will into analyzing his skills, desperately seeking an opening, and immediately initiated seize. Yes, he was stronger, far stronger, but if I could forcibly take control of even a fraction of his abilities, there was a chance, a sliver of hope. Then came the crushing reality. Blocked. My heart sank, a leaden weight in my chest. It was the same absolute rejection I had experienced when I attempted to seize luminous power. Rimuru had done the same, and I was terrifyingly certain his power far surpassed even hers. His growth was utterly unreal, unfathomable. In just 2 short years, he had gone from a mere slime to something that made even a true demon lord look like a helpless child. He chuckled lightly, his voice relaxed, almost sympathetic, utterly unconcerned by my futile attempt. I see what you tried to do there, Hinata. That's quite an impressive skill you've got. Unfortunately for you, I have a similar skill, but one much more terrifying. His tone was calm, almost conversational, yet his words sent a fresh wave of dread through me. I didn't even feel surprised anymore. Of course he does. Of course he has something even more frightening. My mind was numb, grappling with the sheer, unbridled disparity in our power. Despite everything, despite the overwhelming odds, I lunged at him again, a desperate, almost suicidal surge of defiance. I aimed to overwhelm him with a relentless barrage of slashes and thrusts, a whirlwind of steel. Every strike I made, every desperate attack, he parried without so much as a flinch, his movements minimal, elegant. It was like fighting a colossal, unshakable wall of stone, completely impenetrable. TCH. Still ineffective, huh? I needed to rethink my strategy. Urgently. Moving back, creating some much-needed space, I switched tactics, focusing on long-range magic instead. Fueled by holy magic, my most potent spells screamed through the air toward him, shimmering with destructive intent. However, they seemed to dissipate before they even reached his form, fading into nothingness as if he were utterly untouchable. My breath quickened, ragged. This fight was slipping irrevocably out of my control. He was toying with me, a cruel, extended game, and I had absolutely no way to gain the upper hand. No counter, no escape. At the same time, I could feel my stamina draining away. Humans have limits, but monsters, especially ones like Rimuru, didn't tire. I could have outlasted him if the gap between our strengths wasn't this astronomically massive, but that was no longer an option. Gritting my teeth, every fiber of my being screaming in protest, I took a precious moment to prepare my trump card. I had only one choice left, one desperate, final gambit. As I imbued Moonlight with the full power of disintegration and reinforced it with a potent surge of holy power, my rapier began to glow with an intense, blinding light, a divine radiance so brilliant it seemed to distort the very air around it, shimmering with energy. This was it, my most devastating attack, the one that could even cleave through demon lords. Melt Slash. Without warning, I dashed toward him, moving faster, pushing my body harder than I'd ever moved in my entire life. My form was propelled by sheer, unyielding willpower, pushing through every ounce of fatigue, every muscle screaming. Moonlight turned into a white-hot streak of light as I cut through the air, aiming directly for his heart, a single, absolute point of no return. It was meant to tear apart everything in its path, to melt through his defenses with divine, irresistible power. Yet, Rimuru remained perfectly still, his calm demeanor unwavering, his eyes holding an almost mournful pity. Rimuru's POV. So, she's resorted to using a trump card? Huh? It's a solid plan, honestly. That attack of hers looks like it could even damage Veldora, albeit by a very small amount. I stood still, waiting for her to get closer. From my perspective, she was moving painfully slowly, a snail's pace. The effects of thought acceleration were kicking in at almost maximum output, so her movements were like exaggerated slow motion to me, every muscle twitch agonizingly drawn out. Seal, will I be in danger if that hits me? No. While it will deal damage if it hits, it won't be enough to injure you significantly. Minimal surface abrasion is the most likely outcome. Seal's voice was calm, analytical. So I could literally just stand here and take it with minimal consequences? Yes. That's reassuring. But since I have the opportunity, why not conduct a little experiment? I've been meaning to test how frost magic fares defensively. Velzard has been teaching me how to better control the magnitude of its effects and how to precisely manipulate absolute zero temperatures. Her tutelage has been invaluable. Just thinking about it now makes me blush a bit, recalling her patient yet sometimes teasing instructions. I'm getting distracted again. It's time to end this. With a grin, I raised my hand, palm open, ready to call upon my ability. Cease all motion, I commanded, my voice resonating with an inner power. Instantly, my skill activated. The world around me didn't stop, but everything else slowed to an agonizing crawl. Hinata's momentum, her furious dash, simply vanished as if it were sucked into nothingness. The power of cease motion, an application of the decelerative nature of frost magic, washed over her, trapping her in a field of near immobility. Before it could even make contact with anything, her rapier, Moonlight, shattered into innumerable crystalline fragments, exploding outwards as if it had tried to pierce an invisible, indestructible wall of absolute stillness. Hinata's face, frozen mid-lunge, twisted in profound shock, and I saw the desperation in her eyes for a fleeting moment, a realization of utter defeat. Thankfully, she remained unharmed, as I had focused solely on neutralizing her sword's explosive momentum and energy, carefully dispersing it harmlessly. Now completely still, her attack utterly negated, Hinata slowly sank to her knees, defeated. The fight was over. It is my loss, Rimuru-san. You are truly absurd. I went all out from the start, yet couldn't even land a hit, she admitted, her voice hollow with both awe and profound resignation, her posture slumping. You fought extremely well regardless, Hinata, and if Melt Slash had landed, it would have actually damaged me. I simply activated an experimental defensive technique. It turned out quite well, I replied, waving a hand dismissively, though a touch of pride colored my tone. She looked at me wide-eyed, still trying to process the impossible, the sheer, sudden disparity in our power. How do you know the name of the attack? She pressed, her voice laced with surprise and a hint of fear. I may or may not have analyzed it before I dispelled it. I replied vaguely, my grin widening all the while. You analyzed it? Huh. You're really terrifying. You know that? She muttered, a nervous, almost broken chuckle escaping her lips. I couldn't help but laugh along with her, genuinely amused by her utterly flustered reaction. I extended a hand to help her up, and after a moment of stunned hesitation, she took it gratefully, her fingers still trembling slightly. With our sparring session over, Velzard's crystalline barrier shimmered and faded away, allowing the spectators to approach us. I could see Hinata's group, some breathing audible sighs of relief, others visibly shaken, their faces pale. I didn't blame them, though. I would probably be the same if I saw my leader being so effortlessly toyed with, her ultimate attack rendered meaningless. The group closed in on us, and Velzard was the first to speak. Spectacular performance, Rimuru-kun. You've become quite adept at using my magic. That move you showed off is almost as good as my snow crystal. She praised, her voice filled with delight, a sparkle in her blue eyes. I chuckled awkwardly and scratched the back of my head. I could feel the weight of her words, a genuine compliment from a true dragon, but I wouldn't let it go to my head. Surely you're kidding, Velzard. That barrier is ridiculous, and not even Veldora can get through it. But you are bound to get stronger, she replied earnestly, her gaze full of expectation, clearly seeing my future potential as limitless. The mood shifted slightly when Fritz spoke up, his voice nervous but impressed, his eyes still wide with disbelief. Man, that was terrifying. You really are the real deal, Rimuru-san, he said. His group nodded in dazed agreement, though there was a palpable hint of wariness in their eyes, a deep-seated fear struggling against their admiration. I could sense the tension emanating from them. They were in awe, yes, but they also realized, with chilling clarity, just how far beyond them I truly was. "Oh right, Hinata, here you go. Sorry about your rapier earlier," I said, suddenly remembering the legend-grade weapon she had lost, its fragments scattered around us. Manifesting a perfect, shimmering replica of her rapier, Moonlight, I handed it over to her. Except for Velzard, who merely smiled, the others stared in wide-eyed, utterly stunned shock. Huh? Did you recreate my rapier? Just like that?" she gasped, disbelief evident in her voice as she gingerly took the familiar weapon from my hand. I simply nodded and shrugged, as though recreating a legend-grade weapon from raw magicules was nothing more than a trivial parlor trick. "How?" Her companions gasped in unison, their voices hollow with amazement. "Nothing escapes my analysis," I replied, flashing a wide, triumphant grin. "Terrifying," they muttered, their voices barely above a whisper, laced with a profound, almost reverent awe, their former arrogance utterly vanquished. I laughed at their reaction before continuing. "Since you're all here, how about we tour you guys around Tempest? You can see the sights and relax after our little spar," I suggested, a wide grin on my face. The offer seemed to brighten them considerably. A tour, even with me, sounded infinitely less stressful than a battle against me. With a thought, I activated spatial transfer and teleported us back to Tempest Central Plaza. The transition was seamless and instantaneous, but some of the saints were still a little dazed, staggering, or putting a hand to their head, likely because they were not accustomed to such rapid changes in space. "Welcome to Tempest," I greeted, my grin widening as I looked around at their astonished faces, still processing the scale of what had just happened. Seeing our business had concluded, Velzard excused herself with a gentle smile. After a quick wave, she shimmered and vanished into thin air, teleporting back to our home. Her graceful departure left a quiet sense of finality to our meeting and an unspoken invitation for them to experience the city without my overwhelming presence. The evening had settled in beautifully, and the sun was beginning to dip below the western skyline, painting the sky with breathtaking hues of orange, purple, and fiery crimson. It was the perfect time for a tour of Tempest, especially with the city's vibrant nightlife just beginning to stir, awakening its own unique magic. "The food here is amazing," Hinata remarked, a hint of genuine surprise still lingering in her voice from our earlier stop. "I had no idea Tempest had such hidden gems." I nodded, feeling a deep, almost paternal sense of pride. Tempest has flourished in ways I never imagined, even in my wildest dreams. "I'm glad you enjoyed it," I said, my gaze sweeping over the bustling plaza. Then I led them through the rapidly expanding city, taking a deliberate route through its most impressive districts. The sights and sounds were mesmerizing, a symphony of activity. Shops lined the brightly lit streets, some offering rare, exotic goods from far-off lands, others more mundane but equally crucial for daily life, such as pottery, textiles, and freshly baked bread. Hinata and her companions marveled at everything, their expressions shifting between profound awe and bewildered disbelief. The sheer modernity of it all, the harmonious coexistence of diverse races, and the visible prosperity defied every single piece of dogma they had been taught about monsters. To them, Tempest's progress seemed almost unreal, an impossible dream. However, to me, it was a living, breathing testament to the unwavering hard work, creativity, and loyalty of the people I had brought together. These buildings, the architecture is so intricate, yet so functional. And the lighting, it's so advanced, Glinda murmured, her gaze fixed on a smoothly carved stone pillar. "Look," Lytus exclaimed, pointing to a group of beastmen and dwarves laughing together at an outdoor cafe. "This isn't what we were told. Monsters are supposed to be savage. But this is order," Ser mumbled, his usual bravado utterly gone, replaced by a quiet, almost fearful contemplation. By the time the sun had fully set, plunging the sky into deep twilight, the city had transformed into a wonderland of fluorescent lights and warm, inviting colors. Electric lampposts bathed the streets in a soft, steady glow, while various food and craft stalls sprang to life, their lanterns casting dancing shadows. The air was thick with the warm, enticing scent of cooked food, exotic spices, savory meats, sweet pastries, and the distant, joyful sounds of music and laughter. It was the perfect environment to unwind, to live, and Hinata's group was visibly taken aback by how breathtakingly beautiful and vibrant the city was at night. "This place is incredible," Fritz murmured, his tone filled with genuine admiration, his gaze sweeping across the illuminated plaza. I could see the excitement in their eyes, a heady mix of wonder and curiosity as they took in the sights. Their minds were visibly struggling to process Tempest's rapid advancement in such a short time, the sheer speed of its evolution. They were still getting used to the radical idea of this city, this monster nation that shattered all their doctrines. As the night wore on, I offered them the option of staying at one of the city's finest inns, known for its luxurious accommodations. The suggestion was met with hesitant glances at first, a lingering distrust of monster hospitality. Yet, as the night grew deeper and the undeniable fatigue of travel and battle settled in, their resolve crumbled, and they gratefully accepted. Tempest was a place of comfort, yes, but also a place that clearly demanded respect, and I could see that they had, at last, begun to realize that. Once we arrived at the inn, a grand structure combining traditional human and monster architecture, I led them inside. But before they could fully settle into their rooms, I seized a quiet moment to speak with Hinata about my real favor. I caught her just as she was about to enter her room, gently pulling her aside with a nod toward a secluded seating area in the inn's elegant lobby. "Could we speak for a moment?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral but firm enough to convey the importance. She followed me without question, her curiosity clearly piqued, her eyes betraying a hint of apprehension. We sat in the inn's cozy lobby, far from any prying ears, the faint light from the crackling fireplace flickering softly, casting warm shadows. I summoned 2 steaming cups of aromatic tea from my imaginary space and placed them on the polished coffee table between us. I gestured for her to help herself, and she gratefully took her cup, her fingers brushing the warm ceramic. "What did you want to ask me, Rimuru-san?" Hinata's voice was calm and carefully composed, but I could hear the slight edge of anticipation beneath it. She clearly hadn't expected this private conversation, especially not now. I took a moment, taking a slow, deliberate sip from my own cup, letting the warmth spread through me, before setting it down gently. Then, without hesitation, I met her gaze, letting her see the seriousness in my eyes. "It's about the favor I wanted to ask from you, which, as you might have suspected, isn't actually the fight we just had." I began, my tone steady. She nodded slowly, urging me to continue. "But before that, I'd like to ask something else first." I paused, leaning forward slightly. "Tell me, Hinata, do you, by any chance, work for Demon Lord Luminous Valentine?" I asked, my voice low and my gaze unwavering. Hinata's eyes widened, her composure momentarily slipping, her expression shifting from calm to profound surprise in an instant. But in the span of a heartbeat, her self-control reasserted itself, her gaze sharpening to a keen edge as she carefully considered the question. "I'm assuming she revealed herself at Walpurgis then," she guessed, a hint of wry amusement in her tone, nodding slightly. "Well, not exactly revealed herself, but more like she got exposed by another demon lord who spectacularly blew her cover," I clarified, a slight smirk playing on my lips as I recalled Malim's absolute blunder at Walpurgis. For a brief moment, I thought I saw a genuine flash of amusement in Hinata's eyes, a rare, fleeting glimpse of humor, as though she was trying to suppress a laugh. She quickly masked it, but her expression returned to its usual impassive calmness. "Yes, I do work under her," she confirmed, her voice firm, accepting the truth of my deduction. I couldn't help but smile wryly, a feeling of validation settling over me. "Would you mind telling me why you're asking this, Rimuru-san?" she pressed, her voice a little more curious now, sensing the deeper purpose behind my questions. "And what does it have to do with your favor?" she added, her gaze now sharp, expectant. The moment felt heavier now, the atmosphere in the cozy lobby growing palpably more serious. I took a deliberate breath and looked her directly in the eyes, letting her see my sincerity. "You see, I want you to tell her I wish to discuss a potential peace treaty between Tempest and Libelius." I began slowly, my voice firm. "So, can you deliver my message, Hinata Sakaguchi?"